Welcome, welcome. This is Toni Patillo. Here you are with Elite Insights with me. This is where wisdom meets legacy. And I'm your host. And today we're speaking with one of the most influential leaders in Los Angeles real estate and beyond. And you'll see why shortly. Charles Tourtellotte. I think I got that right. Tourtellotte. By the way, my father is Charles. My husband is Charles. All my nephews have the middle name of Charles. And so Prince Charles, we've got I got something with these Charleses. I don't know what it is. Anyway, Charles is the founder and CEO of LaTerra Development, a leading investment management and development company focused on multifamily and, this is my favorite part right here, self-storage assets. LaTerra's portfolio today includes more than 3,000 residential units and over 1.5 million square feet of storage, self-storage, with a combined portfolio the value of $3 billion. So this is pretty impressive, Charles. With more than 40 years of real estate investment and development experience, Charles has built a reputation for shaping major markets, guiding investment strategies, and leading with vision. You know, he's been featured on CBS, NBC, CNN, the New York Times, and the Los Angeles Times, and was honored as one of Los Angeles's Business Journal's 500 most influential people in both 2024 and 2025. So it is really my honor to welcome Charles Tourtellotte. And we are so excited to have you here because of all that you've accomplished. And welcome to the show, Charles.
Well, thank you, Toni. And I'm honored and to be here. And thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. You know, this journey, if you look back on your career, would you say, or did you ever imagine that you would be leading a $3 billion real estate portfolio today?
Well, yeah, I'm going to answer it this way, that I never specifically imagined it to be exactly that. But, you know, looking back on it, I think if I really think about it, that I certainly would have been able to imagine that it was possible, if that makes sense. In other words, I didn't really have the specific end result. And by the way, I don't feel like I'm at the end, but I didn't have this result in mind when I started my career, but I certainly had high expectations.
Sure. Well, you've done well, obviously. And I know what you mean. You know, when we start these ventures, we often don't know. We know what we want, and we know what our goals are.
Right.
How to get there sometimes shifts and turns as we're going through the process. So I totally understand that. You've been called like one of the most influential people in LA. When you think about your journey, what are some of the defining moments that really shaped your path?
Well, there's been more than one. And I suppose in some ways that's an important question for me to reflect on. But I'll say this, that I'll mention a couple. And those are, I guess the first was when I was still in college at the University of Denver. I went into business with one of my professors, and he was and is a real estate tax lawyer, securities lawyer, and just an all-around expert in real estate. He's still in the department, I think. I think he runs the department now. And he and I went into business together, but he said, "Look, Charlie, you have great personal skills. I want you to go out and buy houses, single family homes, and I will raise the money and I'll teach you that part of the business. In other words, how to raise money.
Okay.
And so real estate securities and transactions sort of came together for me at a very young age. And that was, he really was one of my mentors and taught me so much. And during that time that we were in business together in Denver, I went out and he raised the money for a little over 200 single family homes.
Wow.
And so with that effort, we also created a management company to manage them. And I ran that part of it on a day-to-day basis. So it was a defining moment in the sense, I suppose, that it really got me started. It was a foothold in the business, and I learned a terrific amount in that experience. And maybe the second one that really comes to mind is that I had what I call the big job opportunity with a company that was then one of the big 6 real estate syndicators. And I had that job opportunity, and it was one of the big, call it, breaks in my career in some ways, because I was able to report directly to the president of the company, who was a real expert in negotiating and buying real estate. And so with that interaction, he also became one of my great mentors of my career. And that was something that I will never forget. So I was there for quite a long time, and he really taught me a lot about how to negotiate for and buy real estate.
Now, let me ask you about that, the residential side. You were buying residential homes, about 200 units that you guys were acquiring. Were they for buy and hold, and then you guys lease them out, and then you manage the properties? Was that the deal?
Yes, exactly, Tony. We bought them. That was at a time there were very high interest rates at that time. This was I'm going to say in the late 70s.
Okay.
And interest rates had run up quite high. And so the objective was to find FHA and VA government loan assumptions, right? So they were typically at lower rates and more or less easily assumed. And so that was part of the criteria, was to have those, to buy single family homes with those loans and then rent them out. And they would positive cash flow.
Wow.
So it was really amazing.
And were the people who you were buying the homes from, were they in a distressed situation?
Typically, no. I don't remember it to be that way. They had maybe many reasons for selling, I suppose, but they were Denver's a pretty robust market, right? So it's fairly deep in terms of different opportunities and the reasons people buy and sell. So no, it wasn't particularly a distressed market per se, but whatever people had to do, they had to sell, and maybe there was some distress, but we would buy sometimes, usually one-off purchases, right? So that takes time and transactional time. But sometimes we would buy 3, 4, or 5 at once from owners who had accumulated their own portfolio of homes. So it was that kind of a makeup, but it was over the course of 3, 4 years at least, maybe 5, quite some time, 3, 4 years.
Great, that's awesome. That's a good learning, a good learning ground, right?
It really was. I mean, it trained me in technical contract work that I learned from my mentor lawyer partner, and also he had very good negotiating skills as well. So I trained him in that way, and so I put whatever people skills I had to work. And it was a good combination.
That's nice, very nice. So I want you to share a story from your early career that taught you a lesson that that you still carry with you today? Did we go over these questions with you? Okay, good.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I actually, well, wasn't until last night that I really got
Yeah,
focus on it because this gets a
it's all
bit,
good. We're in the same boat.
okay. But I will say though that, and just as we wind down the discussion about we'll call it the career
Yeah,
defining moments, the company that I worked for in the Bay Area was one of the big six at the time. Our main business was, and maybe I left this out, but it really was multifamily
okay.
apartments. And, and we had an affiliate or sister company, we'll call it, that
Yeah.
managed, that was very, very large, but they were based in Atlanta. So it was a national organization. And my job was to go out and was to really dissect different markets around my territory and then ultimately the country to, to really analyze and find good multifamily apartment investments for our various real estate
Yeah.
investment funds. And some each had their own objective, right? So one might have been an opportunity related fund. So we were buying a lot in Houston and Dallas
Yeah.
at that time, where there might have been more of a cash flow core sort of an acquisition opportunity. And we had funds for that. We had mortgage REITs, and so we were active in all spaces, but the primary asset class being multifamily. There was some retail involved and some some industrial as well, but I would say 80%
Okay.
multifamily. So just adding that in to sort of round out that. But stories from my career, and by the time you get to be in my place, you've had quite a few opportunities to create stories that become part of your
Yeah.
history. But I'll relate this one to you because it seems like I'm working a lot right now in
Oh, yeah.
Chicago,
Okay.
and yeah, and so because of that, I think a lot about my Chicago experience, where I ended up developing a downtown golf course, driving range, and
Wow.
clubhouse at Lakeshore and Wacker, which is what is known as the Illinois Center, and it was on 15 acres, and a relative, sort of impossibility in some way.
Wow.
It's when you're 34 years old, you don't really sort of think about how hard it might be. You just figure out. You say, that's what I want, and that's
Yeah.
what I want to do. And so I was working for for a golf course architect, Dye Designs at the time, and this is after real estate slowed down in the late '80s, and so I went over to Dye. Perry Dye was the son of famous golf course architect Pete Dye, and I went to his company. He asked me to come over because he had a lot of capital demand coming from his design business, which was operating in 13 countries around the world, and a lot of it at the time was Japanese capital. And so we went into business together, and I learned the golf business. I had never played golf, and that was the joke around the company. There's the guy, I was a competitive tennis player and was for 25 years or so. And so the joke was the tennis player now is in the golf business. I walked into my office the first day of my job, and Perry walked me in. He said, "That's a brand new set of golf clubs. You're going to learn how to play golf."
Oh, that's awesome.
So it was cool. Yeah. So I did. But I learned a lot about, the golf business, about designing courses and construction of golf courses. And so, but the story that later ensued was that after 3-4 years of that, the Japanese economy got slow. And so our main investor, which was Dunlop Sports of Japan at the time, they said, look, a very, great sort of relationship we had. They just said, look, they called me. They said, Charlie, we're out.
Wow.
And I'm paraphrasing.
Right.
But very sort of polite and business Japanese sort of way. And I said, okay, and they said, let's just divide up our interests and we'll go our separate ways. So I said, great. So okay. I walked down to Perry Dye's office and I said, hey, Perry, the Japanese are up. And he said, and he kind of just sat back in his chair and said, okay, what do you want to
do? Wow.
And I said, well, I'm working on a property in downtown Chicago that I said, I want to start my own thing. I'm working on one right now in downtown Chicago, and there were 2 or 3 others, one the DC area, but this guy said in downtown Chicago, I want to continue to work on that. He goes, take the deals you're working on with you, just one condition. That condition is that you give the design work. If you make the deal happen, you give it back to me. And so design and construction, because that was that company business. And so I flew back to Chicago to meet with the owner of that downtown 15-acre parcel, and he knew me, right? And I walked in, and I said, oh yeah, by the way, Bill, here's my business card, and he looked at it, he said, well, that doesn't say Dye on it. I said, no. He said, oh, great. Well, so you have your own company now. I said, yeah, I do. But and he said, well, who's in it with you? And I said, you're looking at it.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was a defining moment in the sense that I had just started my own company.
Wow.
And yet I was in one of the biggest moments in real estate, really, and that you could be in. I was in downtown Chicago. I was meeting with a senior VP who owned this land, and he said, come here. And we walked over to the window, and we're on, I don't know, 82nd floor or some high number, maybe it was. And I looked out and I was starting to get a little vertigo. And he said, you mean to tell me you want me to lease that land to you for 15 years? And, just you? I said, yes, I do. And and he looked at me, he said, he thought for a minute, and he said, and he was a golf nut, right? He loved golf. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, if you can deliver Dye and get the money, I will do it. I said, great. We shook hands, and I walked out the door, and I called my lawyer, and I said, okay, start drafting the OM and the PPM. We're going to go raise some money, because I already knew I had Dye for the design.
Yeah.
Right. Wanted. So we created 9 of Dye's best par 3s, including 17 at Sawgrass and some other very famous holes. So it was the best Dye 9 holes of par 3, 100-station double-ended driving range with all natural bent grass tees and a clubhouse. But the story, it was terrifically successful. But the story really is that I didn't have the money.
Yeah.
I didn't
have
the money. And so it was a multi-million-dollar cost even at that time, right? And so I put together, with some help of others, an OM and an offering document, and I walked up and down South Street, I don't know how many times, meeting with capital, trying to get them to provide capital for this project, which was, I thought was terrific, right? And every time my story goes like this. I walked into 99 offices of capital, and they said, basically, what? Get out of here, kid. This is nuts. We're not doing this. And so I kept going, and my story is, I don't know if this is the exact number, but the 100th office I walked into was a very, really, great guy. He was very gracious, Jack Lasney at Rodman and Renshaw. And he said, Charlie, I can't believe how much I love this deal. This is terrific. This is just fantastic. And I looked at him, I said, you do? I said, oh, yes.
That's
so the story really, for me, the moral sort of might be something like, every no gets you closer to yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. That's a powerful story, Charlie. It's really,
thanks.
It completely leads us to where, and so you're still doing this deal, and you're still working with the Chicago market, as you.
I am now. That property is not there anymore, just because it was designed not to be. No, it was an interim land use, and it had parcels, takedown parcels for high-rise
Okay.
buildings, and so it was designed so the parcels could be taken down, sold, or built, while least impacting the operations of their golf facility. So eventually, the market got good enough where buildings did get built, and the facility
Right.
had to close. But I'll say though that was, and I still stay in touch with like folks that are involved in some of the buildings that
Yeah.
went in there, and
Yeah.
and we stay in close touch. But I'm working in the Chicago market right now to buy a portfolio of 1,495
Wow.
apartments.
That's a lot.
So it's a lot. It's a lot, but I'm comfortable with
Yeah.
Chicago in so many ways because I spent so much time. I lived at the golf facility location in the
Yeah.
Swiss Hotel, who was one of my sponsors, and gave me a great uh, penthouse suite. I mean, I was like living the life, right? I was like 34, 35 years old, and penthouse suite at the Swiss Hotel. It was
Wow.
phenomenal.
That is amazing. Yeah. That is amazing. I love that. So let's talk about building LaTerra. Okay.
Mhm.
And I can't wait to get here because anyway, well, I'll tell you when you share on it what's my favorite thing. But LaTerra has become a powerhouse in multifamily and self storage. That's my favorite part right there. That self storage only because I probably have been I've been a storage consumer for
Oh yeah,
over 20 years. It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, I had
wow,
storage for my mom after she passed, and I paid for
yeah.
that for 15 years. And then I said, "Oh, we're never going to look at that stuff again. You know, what are we doing, right?" Oh, so I want you to tell us what was the vision behind starting the company and how has it evolved? Yeah, yeah,
Well, I think the vision, and maybe backing up just slightly, we the vision really was to create a company that was driven to serve the community,
Mm,
right? And so, and when I say that, what I mean is the success had to be based on community, engagement and culture, something that honored the
mm,
community, right? So as I got more engaged in the residential business
yeah,
first, we were introduced by a big global investment bank to a
hmm,
pension fund, and so with that introduction, we were able to grow what is really a very capital intensive business
yeah,
that we
yeah,
have. So we're able to do that. But the storage part came a little later, right? So after we had experienced uh, good success with the residential component of our, at that time that was LA built to core res
hmm,
apartment focused. And so that same investment bank that approached us with that, or really brought us together with the pension fund, really had another line of business that they were building, which was to seed and invest in other
hmm,
companies and be the
hmm,
company investor, right? So they introduced me to the pension fund, who committed first 250 million to us and then approved another
yeah,
350 million. And that, after the success of the priors. And so my investment banker, which was an Australian global investment bank, they said, "Hey, we see what you're doing, right? And well, now we have a proposal that we want you to consider." And I'd already looked at storage,
hmm,
but not yet gotten too deep into it. We want you to be our partner in a storage venture. We're going to seed it. We're going to fund it with 300
wow,
million. and so we but the catch or the key for it is that your company, you guys are entitlement experts. So you get land entitlement, and I'll say storage is not right off the bat for most communities and cities the first thing
Right.
people
Right.
want, right? It's it's not invasive or in any way because it doesn't require a lot of parking. It's
Yeah.
quiet
Yeah.
mostly, and but the city leaders say, well, but yeah, it doesn't really add any big employment or taxes
Hmm.
for us. I'll tell you later why it's important, and people at the cities are now seeing that. I
Yeah.
think so. But so investment bank said, look, we're going to seed that business for you. We want you to build ground up new storage in Southern
Wow.
California.
Would that happen to
And
be public
so,
storage or something like that?
well, we use public storage as our third party property
Okay.
manager
Okay.
right now for many, not
Yeah.
all, but many. And so now we've built this business ground up new. We're delivering the first ground up new, delivering really three of them almost right
Wow.
now. So
Yeah.
this year, so it takes a while, right, from
Hmm.
start to finish. And but some of them, one of them had an operating business that had extra land, so we bought that and we're adding
Hmm.
to it. And but they're all of them in that venture are in Southern California and mostly LA area. And LA has the single best metrics for market metrics for
Mm-hmm.
storage. And that's why they selected us, because we were experts in really the single best market in the country for
Yeah.
self storage. And they said, we want you guys to be our partner
Wow.
in that venture. That's how that
Wow.
began.
That's powerful. Yeah, that's amazing because let me tell you something. The storage business, I've always been curious about how to get into the storage business. And every time I drive by or every month I'm paying my storage, I'm going, I need to be on the other side of this.
Well, I think all of us have felt that way because we before I ever got in the storage business, when I started, I talked to my wife and I said, "How many storage units do we have?" And she said,
Three,
"3."
see? Hmm.
Yeah. Well, because my mom passed, and
Yeah.
then there's generational
Yeah.
sort of storage needs, life
Yep.
storage. It happens. People get
Mm.
divorced, or there's death,
Hmm.
divorce, and I forget what they call it. There's
Yeah.
4 Ds, but
Hmm.
so there's always a demand. And the great thing about storage is that it sort of does well in most all
Yeah.
markets,
Yeah.
right? So it's very stable and
Hmm.
consistent, and so it's a good sort of foil to the other business that
Right.
we had. Uh, we're expanding. We'll talk maybe later about, but development of
Hmm.
residential and self storage, which tends to be a little bit cyclical. Storage tends to be very
Yeah.
consistent and good. It's a good
Yeah.
sort of balance
Yeah.
for us.
It's interesting. Y- what was I going to ask you? There was something I was just going to ask you, and of course, it just ran out of my brain. So now that we know how that all evolved, which is very cool, very cool. Um, what makes multifamily and self storage so exciting to you right now compared to other real estate classes? Obviously, I'm in real estate, and I've been primarily residential. I've done a few commercial deals, but you know, you've taken you're on another level of this thing, and I admire you because you had the balls. Excuse me, I probably shouldn't have said that, but
Hey, I'm from Rhode Island
okay.
originally, so not, not much will shock me. I don't think.
Well, you had the courage, or let's say that, to really. I mean, I love this story where you told this guy, I want to start my own thing. I want to do my own thing." And 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 the fact that you didn't really have the money, that's very uh that's a very empowering and very motivating, inspiring story because A lot of times people think you have to have the money yourself. And the truth is, there's all kinds of ways to utilize and leverage other people's money, right? Yeah.
Right. Right. I think that's, a good place for me to add that it started probably long ago when I was young, but when I was young, I never really felt like I was pressured or had really. I mean, I didn't come from a wealthy background. I just had a peace about me, right? That, and I just knew, and as I went through life, through grade school later, I knew that I was highly
Mm,
favored,
mm,
and so I feel, I just was generally, not always, but generally very
yeah.
calm about my situations. And let me tell you, I had my moments, and there are
Sure. Sure.
challenges, right? But I always found that as I went along, that those challenges and obstacles were sort of moved
Mm-hmm.
away, and the right things were put in my path, the right
Mm-hmm.
people, the right
Mm-hmm.
situations, and so that was something that I got at an early age. I don't know if it was because partly because of
Yeah.
my family. I had a very charmed growing up, just in terms of peaceful in the
Yes.
family, and supportive parents,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
wealthy,
But supportive.
but
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
but so that was something that I think helped me launch, into places that maybe
Yeah.
others wouldn't. Right? I just had a
Yes.
confidence, about what I was doing, and sometimes, I got a few bumps and bruises
Sure.
along the way.
Sure. And that's to be
Sorry.
expected. But the thing I love most is that you're calm. Okay. This is a secret that a lot of people don't realize. And
Mhm.
you have to be you have to understand, like you said, you already knew that you were highly favored. Okay, that's a very
Yeah.
special gift to know that. And a lot of people are operating out of lack or fear or lack, no, low self confidence, low self esteem is low. Mindset and just being confident is key
Mm.
to maneuver
It
in
is.
all of these spaces. I'm clear about that. So I admire, and
Yeah.
I'm grateful that we're talking about this because I do a lot of coaching as well on mindset. And uh if I get people that say to me, "You're so calm," you're so, and the truth is, I know that it's going to work out. It's going to work out.
Right. That's really what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The same thing, I
Yeah.
think. Uh, but and I don't want folks to think that it's, for me. I mean, it's still
Yeah.
normal, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, to have
Yeah,
those
sure,
moments,
sure.
right, where you're not feeling calm or not feeling as confident,
We
but
save those
but
to be at home
somehow.
with the husband or the wife, right? They're the ones who get the brunt of it, right?
Right, that's right. So it's when I sometimes I don't really share that with a lot of folks, but I will say that when I do, people say, "Well, wait a minute, that were you always
Mhm.
like that?" And the answer is always yes, from a young age, but not always during the continuation of the
Yeah,
process.
that's right.
But I don't know if I answered a question or if I got
No, it's
sidetracked,
all
but
good. It's what's powerful is that you have a passion. You know, you really do have a passion, and I
I
love
do.
the fact that when you started LaTerra, this your focus became more community. Let's
Yes,
serve the community, and that is powerful
yes,
because now you've got a purpose. Now you're being of service. Now you are
right.
connecting on another level. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. That's you're making a good point that I could make as well along with it. And I'll say, without that, really you're building on what I think is sort of not a good foundation,
Yeah.
right? So that focus on serving the community, and then I tell my people in the company, I say, everything we do, we should test with, is that what the
Right.
customer wants, or our resident, or our
Right.
tenants, or whoever it may be, because that without that support from the community and we'll call it the end user, you haven't
Mm.
gotten the solid foundation that you
Mm-hmm.
really need. And that's a construction
Mm-hmm.
term, but it works, I think, in this
Yeah.
example. So, but storage and residential kind of
Mm-hmm.
work together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part that maybe goes unnoticed sometimes. And we try to point it out when we go through our entitlement processes at the city. And they say, well, can you do residential there? And they said, no, it's not the right zoning, or we want to do storage. And they say, that doesn't bring what we want. It's not offensive. It just doesn't add
Mm-hmm.
anything. And so the point we like to make is it
Yeah.
does add, and adds to really the overall ecosystem of the
Mm-hmm.
community, because people need, and we're living
Yeah.
examples of it, they need outside locations to
Right.
store things, either temporarily or
Yeah.
hopefully
Yeah.
more permanently. But but um, but those needs, right, aren't recognized always. And then the other thing to think about, maybe, Tony, is that apartments and residences by necessity are getting
Yes.
smaller, right?
Yes.
Because of costs and other
That's true.
limitations, and people can't afford big
Yep.
spaces. And so when spaces start to get smaller in the residence, then that means the residents' things have to go
Mm-hmm.
somewhere else,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so that's why I believe, and it's been proven, that storage really adds to and I use that word
Mm-hmm.
ecosystem, because I think it's really important for the community.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of storage, and I was at my storage unit the other few weeks ago, and I was closing one out because I just needed. If they kept going up in price and up and up and up. I was paying like $600 a month, and I hadn't seen this stuff in years, right? And I was like, no, we got to change this. So I tried shutting it down completely in one day, and I still ended up getting a smaller unit just to house certain things. So, make a long story short, there was a gentleman across from our storage unit, and he worked for the Dodgers, and they stored a lot of their merch stuff in this public storage place. And I said,
Right.
you guys use storage? He said, are you kidding? He said, we have to. He said, we have to. And then we come here and we get what we need out. And then so yeah, this is a part of
Yeah.
our thing. And
Another
yeah.
example, right, of being part of the necessary ecosystem
Yeah.
in the community. We have a project in Irving,
Okay.
Texas, right? So we have it's a former Fry's electronics store, and I've known Randy Fry now for 20 some years, and so we have a couple of ventures like this with him, where we take one of his former electronics stores, which they closed that business down, but they still retain the real estate. And at that location, we're sandwiched in between. We have a Home Depot right next to us, and contractor. We're about ready to open that one too. That was a conversion, right, to storage, the Fry's building to storage. And so the Home Depot, so many contractors and people who buy Home Depot, then they buy them and then they store them, right, and then they put them to use, right. So that's a little bit like what I think you were saying. And then, but the site that we had there was almost 20 acres. We didn't need that much storage, so we sold off the frontage to a big grocery store in Texas called HEB, and they're soon to open, or they're under construction at least, on a 115,000 square foot grocery store that's very popular and has a lot of traffic. So they may use us for part of their storage needs as well, because they're just growing concern. So it really, again, it's integral to the community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. So this has been so amazing. I'm just saying. Okay. So LaTerra emphasizes product design and development. What's one project that you're especially proud of that reflects your vision?
Well, that's going to be an easy answer from me today. And that's our project in downtown Burbank on the 5 freeway called Intro Burbank. And it's adjacent to downtown Burbank. And it's 573 units. And we just opened, less than 2 months ago, say a month and a half ago, maybe. But it reflects the design that I'm going to call is next generation for certainly for our company. And if I may be so bold as to say, even in anywhere that I've seen, this design is leading edge, and it's leading edge in many ways. And again, I'll relate it to community engagement, right? So the first of all, we have a 1 acre rooftop with 5 different bodies of water, 2 pools, jacuzzis, and wading pools, things like that, right? So on the rooftop is also 2 fitness centers, all rooftop oriented. And so it has an amazing set of what I'm going to call amenities I think better than any I've seen anywhere. And I see a lot, right? But maybe more importantly, we also tailored the amenity spaces to the entertainment industry, because we're in the entertainment capital of the world, Burbank. And while we were going through entitlement, we had support from one particular entertainment company, one of the big ones, and we appreciated it. And to show our appreciation, and also we asked for help on what can we design in our building that would be good for the people that work in your company, because you have thousands and thousands of employees, and none of them have a place to live in Burbank, and they want to, right? Because they all have to commute every day. And so they said, let us give you some feedback. So they did, and we ended up with, Tony, with things in the building other than the amenities I described. We ended up with we have a get ready room, right? Which is where people they can, before shoots or before entertainment, it's, they can get hair and makeup done, let's say. So that's, we call that the get ready room. We have a sock hop where we have an ice cream machine. So it's very, kind of the times, and people use it and like it, right? And so, but we also have a podcast. So maybe we could do it from there next.
Great.
Yeah, and we have a green screen room where folks can create content, and with that, because today with YouTube, there's so many that are created, not in the big studios anymore, right? So they could do it right where they live in our project. So those are some of the examples of things that we put in it. So that was addressing the community need, and the community sort of engagement created this, what I call leading edge product.
And these are apartments? And
they are 507.
And how many bedrooms, and what's the makeup of the units?
Well, it's a full range of from studios all the way to 3 bedrooms, and we have a certain number of them are dedicated to be for moderate income families. So call it working class, it's very police and fire and teachers, that so we have a certain number of units of the project are dedicated for that.
That's fantastic. Phil and I go back because he worked at iHeartMedia, and I used to go to in the studio, and it ended up being iHeart. iHeart bought whoever had it before was I can't even remember the name, but we had such a great time. And the studios were all there for a lot of different people, a lot of different radio shows that were happening. This is, I think, before the podcast thing blew up. Now everybody's doing the podcast thing, but Burbank is a prime area. I used to work for Dick Clark, and yeah, I
Oh,
worked for Dick
yeah.
Clark, and we had an office right there. I'll never forget, 3003 um, uh, Olive, Olive, and so
Oh, yeah.
right
Yeah.
across the street from NBC. So I know the
Yeah.
area, and it's booming with entertainment stuff. Okay, so
It is.
that's a prime move you just made there. That's awesome.
Thank you. It's so far bearing out to be true. We've leased, gosh, I don't know, almost 70
Mm,
units in two
really?
months. Which is a record leasing pace for any product that we've built and maybe any I've
Hmm.
heard of.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting, and I can see why you have this passion. Uh, there's the creative side, and then there's the
Yeah.
community side, and then there's the business
Right.
negotiation side of it. So there's all these
Yeah.
dynamics that you get to play ball in, and have fun.
That's true. And I read ahead a little bit on what you gave me last night through my homework. Um, and I'll just add right there that what does excite me is all the things you just said. But really, what excites me the most is other than when I
Yeah.
get up every day is besides
Yeah.
breakfast, which is my favorite.
Oh, that's cool.
But besides breakfast is
Hmm.
transactions.
Hmm.
So transactions are
Hmm.
really, I sometimes refer to myself, people who don't know me say, what do you do? I say, well, I'm a transactional technician.
I like that.
And so a very famous real estate investor and from Chicago, actually, Sam Zell, referred to himself as a serial
Mm,
transactionalist.
right.
And I guess I would like to sort of adopt that name for me too, because I
Yeah.
really am that. I love transactions and I
It's
love the
the
deal.
art of the deal. And
It
and
it
and I
is.
completely am in alignment with you on that, because after 25 years of being in this real estate, prior to that I was entertainment for 20 years. But now, you know, it is the art of the deal. And that is what turns me on the most is and
Yeah.
well, I specialize in distress markets, okay? And that's
Uh-huh.
really when I got turned on, is when 2006 we started to feel that, and then 2007 I was like, oh wow, what's happening here? And
Right.
I had to make a decision whether I was going to go back to the entertainment business, or if I was going to go get a job. Which I even working in the entertainment business, wasn't like a job. It was like I was one of the partners.
Right.
Between Dick Clark and Barry Gordy, those are my two mentors in the entertainment business. So,
Uh-huh.
interestingly enough, when I went into real estate, I wasn't real excited about it. My own realtors who talked me into getting into real estate, but it wasn't until the market was crashing that I got really turned on by it. And that was because I
Yeah.
can help people. I can help people get
Yep.
through the crisis. And
Yeah.
that's very gratifying when you can help somebody get out of a stuck space, and or what they
Hmm.
think is they're losing, everything, and you're able to
Right.
help them get through it. And at the same time, you develop this relationship with people. It's not
Yeah.
just uh, transactional type of a thing. It is transactional, but it's bigger than that, because
That's very
you're developing relationships, you're helping people, and at the same
yes.
time you get the opportunity to really get creative with the deals, you know, and think outside of the box.
Well, yeah, no, for sure. And, helping others is really
Mm,
fundamental to my personal goal, but also, to being successful in as you just pointed out, I think, because it's driven by
yeah,
real
yeah,
things, right? And, things that are
yeah.
important. And so, but I went through the '06, '07, what I call Great Recession too.
Did you? And how was that for your business?
That was a bit of a
Hmm.
rocky road, uh,
Hmm.
but got
Hmm.
through it. As I said, those obstacles sometimes pop up, but they ultimately are removed. But it was replaced with some
Yeah,
opportunity
yeah.
because I began this very company at that
Wow.
time, and by purchasing land at deep discounts from
Wow.
lenders. You know, some of the very lenders that were my lenders during the good times before the Great
Right. Yeah.
Recession, right? They said, Charlie, you did a great job. You did all the right things. We've got ended up with all this land on our balance sheet. We'd like to sell it, and we thought
Hmm.
of you. And so that's how I began this company, was buying
Wow.
distressed land from
Wow.
others that we could repurpose,
Mm.
redesign,
Hmm.
re-entitle, and sometimes put a development on, and then sell to at that time public
Sure.
home builders and who didn't want to
Wow.
own land. So we built up a large portfolio in the very beginning in this company of
Hmm.
land that was purchased and held to be
Hmm.
resold to home
Okay.
builders. That was how this company got
Wow.
started.
I used to work for a company. It was land banking, and
Oh,
yeah, it
really?
was land banking, and we represented people who were looking to buy land way out in these areas where nothing is, okay? Because in the future, they
Right.
were hoping that it would get bought by these Home Depot, all these big developments. And I'm not sure
Yeah,
how
yeah.
you're aware of how it all gets put together. But
Well, the path of growth, if you
yeah,
can anticipate
yes,
that, right?
yes. So that was an interesting time, and it was right in between that time that I was in. I keep trying to remember what year it was, but bottom line is that made me think of land banking. You know, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's talk about um, if somebody shadowed you for a week at LaTerra. I might have to be the one to come and shadow you, Charlie. I need to grow up and be like you. So, what would surprise them most about the way you run the business? That's a very good question, actually.
It is. I will say what I think people would be most surprised to know is that I run my entire company from my day timer. This
No
guy right
kidding.
here with my paper calendar. I mean,
Yeah.
you can see.
Oh
I mean,
wow.
look at
Wow.
this,
Okay.
and it keeps me organized. It keeps me focused on what is on tap for that any
Mm-hmm.
given day,
Mm-hmm.
right? It gets busy with a lot of calls and Zoom
Yeah.
calls and meetings. And so I would say that would be sort of the one thing that might surprise folks the most. And maybe the other is, that I do a lot of, I call it management by walking
Mm.
around.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we, I try to encourage people to work as much as they can
Yeah.
from the office because it helps with
Yes.
efficiency. So
So
so I get I can meet someone or walk over to someone's office and chat with them and in 5 minutes cover what could have taken 2 or 3 days and back and
right.
forth
That's right.
emails, right?
That's right. You know,
So
that's that's
I think that
that's what I call, well, we won't call it the old school, but I'll call it the old school. But when I first got in real estate, my mentor, who was my realtor, that was my when I bought my first home, this is my realtor who talked me into getting into real estate. She said, "Oh, you'd be fantastic." And I said, "I don't want to be a realtor, right?" So, but going back to where was I going with that? So all of a sudden I had lost my train of thought.
Well, that is old school. I'll
There,
give you
but
that.
that technique right there. Now you bring me back. When I started out with Prudential John Arrow in Beverly Hills, and
Oh
we
yeah,
came to the office every day. It was, yeah, oh yeah,
did
and
you?
that's because the energy was there. The
Right.
energy. This is where we'd have a weekly meeting with the entire brokerage, and everybody would
Yep.
pitch their stuff. And then I learned that people were pitching things they didn't even have just to be saying they were pitching something, right? Ah,
Right. Well, I can see it. And it's the energy, it's the creativity. It's almost like a think
mm-hmm.
tank. And I started my career while in college, before going into business with my professor
Mm-hmm.
that I mentioned. But I worked for a real estate brokerage company
Okay.
in Denver, and they would make me come to the office and go to meetings and sit and
Yeah.
answer the phone. That was called
Yeah, we
the
worked the
floor,
floor
right? Okay,
exactly.
Charlie, you got
Yeah,
the floor today,
exactly.
and 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 so and I while I started when I was a sophomore in college, and I was making more money than most anyone I knew. I became a top producer for
Mm,
them before I college. I won a top producer
wow.
award. So I was just it really inspired me, and got
Yeah,
me engaged.
that's awesome. And I think the biggest shift we've had in our market today is the since the pandemic is now
Mhm.
nobody wants to go back to work. Everybody wants to work from home, and everybody wants to be remote. And it is true, you can get a lot done. You take away the commute time and having to get dressed and all these things. But I do, what we've been able to do with the company I'm with. Um, they are a cloud-based brokerage. They're the first cloud-based brokerage in the world, and we are now the fastest growing
Wow.
real estate brokerage in the world. It's EXP, and we're on that
Wow.
Nasdaq. We're all stockholders. It's got multiple streams of revenue that you can earn. But I'll tell you, um, I thought I was going to miss not going into the office. I thought I was going to miss that. And then I was like, how do you do this from, but I like going to the office. I went to the office every day. But now with technology, we're able to still do meetings, but we're doing them through Zooms, right? And and
Right.
you adjust. But I don't know. The most recent thing here is with the AI. So that I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna ask you to chime in on this AI world and what's happening
Right.
with our market today. And it doesn't feel like you're too affected by the worldly events, or maybe you are. I don't know. But tell me your thoughts on AI, and then we have the events of what's happening in the world.
Sure. Well, I lump AI in with technology
Yeah.
overall, right? And we encourage and use AI in our business almost
Okay.
every day, and that it comes in different shapes and sizes and
Mhm.
formats, right? Um, and we make sure that we use it as a tool and not as a
Right.
crutch, right? Uh, and so we always have to really sort of
Mhm.
repackage what we learn, good basic things from AI. So technology, I think, from my standpoint, Tony, is
Mhm.
integral to really what this company and this industry is
Yeah.
where it's
Yeah.
headed, right? So what I try to encourage my folks to do is, be forward thinking with your
Mm.
mindset, right? And that means using technology, using
Mhm.
AI, and I try to instill that in
Mhm.
people, when I
Yep. Yep. Well, I certainly believe in it. And 3 years ago, I was one of the first 42 agents to get certified in AI. And today,
can.
this is like it has changed my business and how I can better integrate my
Mhm.
services with my clients. Now a lot of this
Yeah.
stuff that I used to do, I spent a lot of time on the computer preparing for listings and all these things. Now it's like, boom.
It's almost
Yeah.
instant, right? So because we deal with a lot of capital sources because we must. And if we have a transaction that, is a certain height, we can put it into an AI-based system and it'll tell us which of our capital sources are most,
Wow.
suited for that investment.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Whereas before you had to do all this research and you had to do all this polling and all this stuff. Right.
Read your notes.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. So you've been honored as one of LA's 500 most influential people for 2 years in a row. How do you personally define influence and what responsibility comes with that?
Great responsibility comes with anything that is sort of any privilege comes with responsibility. You influence as privilege of sorts. I would say that influence really it's using your position in a consistent and trustworthy way. And it's always demonstrated through your judgments and your actions, right? So I think that sort of tries for me to define influence. It's because you're charged with a certain responsibility, and the way that you can apply that influence is by being consistently trustworthy and showing by your actions that they are.
I agree 100%. It's trust. That trust thing is huge, and that's where the influence. If you wouldn't be able to have influence if people didn't trust you, okay? So they go hand in hand,
And that's why I use that in my definition of influence, right? Because without it, you
That's right. That's right. So being featured on CNBC and NBC and New York Times is very impressive. What message do you hope always comes across when you're in the spotlight?
Well, I guess first, and I mentioned this earlier, that creating a better community is a message that I want to come across as being sort of our MO. But I will say in more specific terms that the industry that we're in and is really driven by and it's dependent on infrastructure. Right. So infrastructure can be things like I'll use water and power as the two sort of fundamental pieces of infrastructure that are needed and necessary. And so I try to get that across when I have a more open platform like that, because infrastructure and now I'll say technology-driven infrastructure is that we won't be able to grow without it because you think about residential growth, it's so needed. You need water and you need power. You need those things. And those things hold us up a lot of times on our projects. For the approval process or in post-approval process where we're dealing with the municipalities that provide those things. But the other thing I think is that that with the growth of AI, right? We have so many, sort of. Let's see, what's the thing I'm thinking of here? We have data centers, right? So data centers are really now a very large and booming business, and it's become really for the big players, that are like Microsoft, who's investing billions into those kinds of projects. But again, they have high power demands, really high. So they need a lot of electrical power, and so whether you're in Texas or you're in California or any state, most of the communities aren't set up yet to be able to provide and produce that kind of power and transmission. So that's part of infrastructure, and that's what I try to stress. With is that, and maybe last thing I was thinking about when I was reading through my notes was we really want to stress that we honor the community and the culture that we're in, and we work to engage with the leaders of the community so that we can be as closely aligned with that community as we can. Whether Stewart or residential.
Exactly. So let's talk about some of the challenges and insights that you've gotten. Oh, wait a minute. You've led teams and investors through big wins and market challenges. What leadership style and how do you keep people inspired during these uncertain times? Yeah.
Now there's an important question, right? I would answer, I guess, Toni, by saying my first and most sort of highest level quality is positivity. So I try to remain positive even when most reasons not to be are present.
That's right.
and so I think and so I want that to come across to the people that are under my leadership. And also, I thought of empathy because you want people to feel like that they understand, and to the extent we're able to, I like to be empathetic, but that I also think that demonstrating resilience is sort of the thing that is hard to talk about. You always have to just demonstrate it, right? Resilience to impacts, resilience to day-to-day things, and maybe not really overreact to day-to-day events, but try to stay focused in the bigger picture, right? Because it's easy to be drawn off course through day-to-day events that could happen.
That's a whole nother subject about this distraction thing, because it's almost like technology, AI, all of this is kind of designed to draw you. It's like whatever you spend your time with online, the algorithm is picking that up. AI is picking that up. And then they just feed it back to you. It just gets fed back to you.
Right.
So if you're looking at negative stuff, if you're looking at bad news, if you're looking at stuff that's not empowering, then you get drawn into that, and then next thing you know, you're suicidal. Okay. And
we're bombarded with bad news because that's what a lot of the certain type of media wants to put out is because I believe they must think that it's newsworthy. But I think we forget about those things that aren't so negative and depressing.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's talk about, you've lived through several real estate cycles, and I want you to share a time when the market tested you and what you learned from it.
I'm going to say the one time I was most tested, and you're right, I've lived through several now, really was the Great Recession, I call it. And I suppose others do too, right? That was that 06, 07 where it began and lasted for a bit. And I think that is the one part of my career that I can say was the most impactful to me, because it took a while to sort of what I call clean up the messes that were, the market created messes, really. But what did I learn from that? I guess I'm going to say resilience, unquestionably, and then relying on my core values as the fundamental foundation to get through, right? Knowing that gave me the outlook that I know I could get to the place I needed to be if I stayed with my core values and didn't get knocked off balance by it. And then also being okay with whatever the outcome is. If you just sort of sit back and say, I've done everything that's in my power, and now it's up to a higher power to really get me through. But I'm okay with whatever the outcome may be, as long as I'm being the best that I can be, and no one can be me better than me, right? I don't compete with anybody. I compete with me.
That's right.
And so as long as I recognize that I'm my own competition, and I get up every day, if I'm being the best me that I know how to be, I work on it. Like everybody, I have my moments when I may not have been right, but that's my goal, and I'm okay with the outcome as long as I do that, right? So if I end up starting over, and I use the example sometimes when I get around with people, I say, I could sell suntan oil on the beach and be happy.
Oh, yeah.
I'd probably have a big suntan oil business if I did that.
Right.
Yeah, maybe. But whatever the outcome is, I'm okay with it. So those are the things that I may have sort of come out of that experience with.
That's a powerful message, because when you surrender, I didn't say give up, and I didn't say don't do your best, don't show up and do the best version of yourself. But when you know how to surrender and just turn it over, right? Then what is that? That's a phone. It's not this phone. Anyway, we're gonna let it go. But it's really important to have that mindset of knowing it's going to be okay. However it turns out is how it's going to turn out.
Right.
And we're okay with that. We're not attached to. I always tell my folks, don't be attached to the outcome, because anything is subject to change. Right. Anything. Anything is subject to change.
And yes, so if and then people might say, well, how do you achieve that, right? And that's easier said than done, maybe. But I always like to say faith and family.
Yeah.
That helps me.
Yes.
For me, right?
Sure. I agree with you. Faith and family. Yeah. It's positivity. It's mindset. It's being flexible, being open, and focusing on, the important things like the community. How can we, right?
It is, and use your communication skills that you get it, right? Use them and develop them. Identifying what your best skills are in developing them is really, I think, fundamental to really getting to the best you can possibly be, right? You have to really sort of be able to identify what you're good at, and then really say, okay, I'm going to focus on being the best me I can possibly be.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. So, looking ahead, what's next for LaTerra?
Well, bringing it back to more concrete things, I guess my first thought on that is that our day-to-day business focus, as you know, includes development, which is hard to do today because capital is resisting that to some extent. Although that's changing, and it will change as interest rates come down and cost of capital becomes lower. I mean, a construction loan sometimes just in the budget, sometimes 20 to 30% of that is interest reserve on the loan.
Yeah.
Right. So we need to bring that down, right? And so, so we're focused on buying existing assets, whether they're storage assets or around the country or whether they are apartment and multifamily assets. We're very focused now on creating a platform that will be very good at buying existing assets, because you buy them in many cases for a lot less than replacement costs.
Right.
So it's economic sense to do that. So that's sort of one thing I would say that we're focusing on, and it gets me really excited every day. And that, because I get up every day and I think, okay, what do we need to do today with the company? And so the other is scaling. Scaling is what makes things more possible, right? So when you have a larger scale, you have the ability to really execute at a higher level with more economic efficiencies. And so scaling our investor operating platform, where investors invest with us, and then we provide back to them asset management, construction, development, acquisition, disposition, all the different components that go into the investor platform that we provide. So building that up and scaling it is really fundamental to what I think we will be doing and already are. And then also creating investment funds, right? We currently have that, but we're looking very hard at that. Is create an investment fund where people can just invest with us, and then we will go invest on their behalf, utilizing our already existing investor platform to do that.
That's cool. That brought up something in my brain, and I'm thinking, so you're acquiring existing assets, and then you have to manage those assets, right? So you have how many people on in your company?
Gosh, I guess. Well, let's say depends on any given day, because we add and subtract based on project level, because we're also a general contractor. So we staff up when we have people on site and we're actually actively building something. But I would say somewhere between 40 and 50 right now. And I would say that's about right. But we're, like I mentioned, Tony, we're buying existing. We're in the process of acquiring a portfolio of apartment assets in a terrific market in Chicago. So we're in Chicago. And so that's an example really of buying existing, and that particular one has an amazing cash flow because they have Fannie Mae loans at low 4% interest rate, interest only. So day one, we have great cash flow. So people investors like cash flow.
Of course.
I like it too, but
well, that's important.
I guess
the whole cash flow thing. So when you find these existing properties that are the people who are selling them, what are the reasons they're selling? Is it because they're up in age? Is it because they're having trouble? Or
it's I'm going to say one of a couple of things. It's some, and this could be maybe where oversupply has occurred, right? Some are distressed because they have too much. They have debt that's coming due. So that could be Dallas. It could be Phoenix. It could be the markets, the Sunbelt markets, where so much supply has occurred lately over the last few years, right? And while it's absorbing, it hasn't fully. And so sellers, owners who have built and they have their construction loans are coming due, they can't get a takeout loan that's big enough to pay off the debt they have. And so that's why. So what we can do as buyers is the opportunity for us is to buy at less than what it costs a year to build, but the market says it's worth this, right? So somebody loses money. We don't want that to be us. So we try to buy at the market, but the market is pricing much lower than the replacement cost. So that's one reason. That's
Yes.
distressed, right? The one that I'm buying in Chicago, though, is not that, because that has terrific cash flow. It's in a market that is low supply and high demand, so they didn't get overbuilt like the
Yes.
Sunbelt markets
Yes.
did, right? But this seller, who, and this is a personal relationship I've had for maybe 30
Wow.
something years,
Yeah.
35 years. I've known them, and before they put it on the market, they said, Charlie, we're going to sell this. And it would take us a long time to sell one by one. We had plenty of brokers in Chicago
Yeah.
who would list them. But if you want to buy the whole portfolio, you'll get a really good price, because we're winding down a lot of our company business. So we're gonna get more liquidity on the balance sheet for our owners and shareholders. But and so their motivation for selling is different, right? They're more, sort of wind down mode, and we are the beneficiary of that.
It's nice.
Yeah,
that's a relationship thing. That's beautiful.
Yeah, what wasn't an on market? This is a totally off market relationship driven.
That's exciting. Wow.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, that's exciting. So I want you to, before we close, is there anything new or exciting? You told us about the Chicago, that project. We covered a lot of stuff here, which was amazing. I can't wait to see the end product. But wow, thank you so much for coming on. It's been amazing.
Well, you're really my pleasure and my honor. I will say, in terms of what might be coming, that's not really sort of out in the market from our standpoint, but I'll give you a teaser.
Okay.
So I mentioned to you that we're looking at creating investment funds, right? But what I didn't mention is that we're also considering merging real estate together with digital assets like Bitcoin.
Oh.
In terms of the investment profile of the fund. So I'll just leave it at that, because I can't disclose everything, but there will be a time in the not too distant future where I think we're going to launch that kind of an effort, and I think investors will embrace
that. That is powerful. Yeah, it's so key in to be ahead of, in the front of this stuff, right? And we have to constantly keep ourselves abreast of what's coming and how this is all shaping up. And you either get on board with it or you get lost, and you know.
Yes, my son is of that age where he's I credit him for coming up with this, but I'm on board if we're testing out some things out of it.
That's exciting.
But that's an exciting thing.
We have to have these youngsters with us, Charlie, because otherwise we're like,
Well, and I don't want to hand my generational business over to my son that's a dinosaur, right? I want it to be full of life and thriving and really leading edge in as many ways as we can.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your amazing story. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We are so honored and so grateful to be able to have these type of conversations and dialogues about, how we are building and how we are being in this space. And I think it's important for people to hear. And I do these interviews with people of like mind, because it's important. We've got to take responsibility in keeping people up, especially during these times, right? So, whatever we can do to contribute to the mindset of others, right? And the hope the hope
Yeah.
for others, because a lot of people that are glued to the media stuff, they lose hope, they lose faith, and they're, so we got to do what we can do to keep everybody flowing.
Agreed. And sharing, success stories, sharing experiences can provide, I think, that hope, Toni, that you're referring to, so that people can really get re-inspired in some ways, their own success. But I'm grateful to you and your audience, our audience, and to be able to share, and look forward to the feedback.
Well, you know what? I can tell you right now, we're going to have you back when you get ready to make that big announcement. Okay.
Okay.
We might
fair
have your
enough.
son come on with you. I don't know. I don't know if he's ready for this, but anyway.
Oh, he's more than ready. He's if you go on our website and look at our intro Burbank project, he's on a video there that's a local Burbank firm put together. So he's pretty tuned up for it, I think.
So the Burbank project is primarily a rental product, right? Okay.
It is. Yeah, resident.
And so do you have an on-site management company, or how are you guys doing that?
Yes. Yeah. We have property management that we use. A big property management company that's running that one. And then here, what we do is we asset manage, right? So there's two levels of management. So at the property level, and then asset management happens here, and we oversee the property level management and other aspects of it on behalf of our investors.
Gotcha. Beautiful. That's a well-oiled machine you got going there.
Well, we keep working on it. We try to get better every day.
Again, this is Elite Insights with Toni Patillo. This is where wisdom meets legacy. And don't forget to subscribe and share the episode. We're super excited about this venture, and we're going to keep building wisdom and keep building purpose. We are here for a purpose. So thank you. And thank you, Charlie. We will definitely be having you back.